right here on your hometown station, KHTS. I'm your host, Jazmine Urbina, here in the studio today with my dad and co-host, Alex Urbina. Hi, Dad.
How are
Are
you?
you paying attention?
I am. I'm trying to get us all locked up on Facebook, so we're trying to do technical difficulties here.
So today we're going to be talking about why kids stop paying attention to their parents or stop talking to their parents, and now I'm not paying attention. Why kids stop talking to their parents. And I know you probably have a couple of things that you want to go over, but I feel like the things off the top of my head why we stop listening to you guys is probably going to trump all your whole list that you spent hours on.
And that's okay because, your insight from the child perspective or the youth or young adult perspective is important too. So that's all right, and it's welcomed.
So do you want me to go on mine first? Because I feel like no matter everything that, is probably on your list, I think is all going to come down to one thing, and it's going to pretty much go back to our experience of how we experienced your reactions or how you guys responded to things that we tell you. And that's the thing that shuts us off and shuts us down and says, you know what, I actually don't want I don't want to interact with you anymore because I feel like you're not responding the way I want. So for me, the number one thing why kids stop talking to their parents is because you don't actually listen. So don't get offended first, parents, if you're listening, because I know that you think you're listening and you probably are, but to actually listen and hear what they're saying, it comes off differently than you think, or they're looking for it to look a certain way. And when it doesn't, they chalk it up to, oh, you're not listening. We don't care. So why talk to you anyways? So I think that's the number one thing is they're thinking, if you're not listening, I'm wasting my time. I'm wasting my breath on hoping that you're going to care about me and what I have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Your kids have created evidence that you don't listen. And I also want to break down the distinction between listening and hearing. You can actually listen to somebody, but somebody on the other end of the communication might not feel heard. And there's two different distinctions that we have to learn as parents is I might be listening, but am I validating that you were heard? And what kids really are looking for is the experience of being heard and validated that what they're saying is important, that it matters, and more importantly, that it's landing. Like you're actually receiving the information. It's important to you. And they're looking for certain things about your posture and your facial expressions that validates that.
Yeah, and when I was saying we're looking for response like in a certain way, it kind of, I guess, is a little bit selfish because we want it to look a certain way, but I think it's a universal, like you said, it's like the body language and nodding your head and saying yes and kind of really just paying attention and being focused. I don't really think is asking for too much. So I just want to point out that it could be interpreted that maybe you think that you're getting your point across, or you think that you're, a good listener, but it doesn't look the way we want it or something. And then, we get mad about it and we're like, oh, okay, we're not going to talk to you anymore. But really, if you follow those universal steps of nodding your head, saying yes, acknowledging and just being in the conversation, there's not really much that we're going to miss there. It's definitely like, we know you're listening. We know you're paying attention. I think another thing is the way you respond is automatically, I know for me that if somebody responds in a certain way or a certain tone of voice, especially if I'm expecting it from them or because I know their personality, if they do that right away, right off the bat, I'm like, okay, never mind. This is why I don't talk to you, kind of thing. Because if I say something and all of a sudden, you or mom says, oh, well, you always do that. So, or, you kind of have like a certain tone in your voice where it makes us want to shut down and not talk to you
Yeah,
guys anymore.
it could be a doubtful tone. It could be a tone that represents a "see, I told you so" in it. There could be, we don't realize that tones actually communicate more than just the tone. It symbolizes something, whether it's real or not. Like I might not really, that's not really what my tone is saying from my come from. But if you hear it like that and you've attached that meaning to it, then every time you hear that, you're going to have that same experience over and over again. Like I remember when I was growing up, my mom used to have a certain tone. It was like a whine that she had in her voice when she would say something to me, and it would always it would always like tag me. And it was something simple. It sounded something like this. Alex, how many times do I have to tell you that? And it was the tone that she tippy-toed over behind. It was the music behind the words that would have me cringe. In hearing that tone, I would think that I'm not good enough, or there again, I've disappointed you, or there again, you don't think that I'm capable of something. So you got to remember, we as kids make up stories, and we make up stories based on your tone. So if you came to me and started sharing something with me, and right off the bat, my first response is, well, if you would, and it's a certain pitch, it's a certain, way about the way I'm saying, and it's how I'm saying that triggers some of your own insecurities, some of your own self-doubts, and some of the assumptions that you've put me in. Like you put me in a certain box that, hey, my dad doesn't listen, or whatever box you've put me in and labeled it. As soon as I hit that tone, I just validate that for you one more time, and then it sabotages us being able to have a powerful communication.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about this last week too about actually listening to people. And one of the things I brought up, and I'm going to say it again just because it was a really big eye opener for me and really good advice. So, a couple of years ago, my brother had told me that you can always tell if somebody's listening to you by the way that they respond after you finish talking. If they respond right away and they have a solution to your problem or they have a comment to make and it's something really instant, you can kind of tell at what point they checked out and they were running their thing in their head saying, okay, this is how I'm going to respond. And to me, I kind of realized, well, I do that. My parents do that. My friends do that. So for me, that was a big eye opener, and I realized that right off the bat, as soon as I'm finished talking, as soon as my dad, my mom, my sister, my friend, whoever start speaking right after me, and they go into their, oh well, maybe whatever, blah blah blah.
Offering unsolicited advice, right?
Yeah, as soon as that happens, it's like instant right after I'm done talking, or even cutting me off while I'm talking. I'm like, okay, there was a point where you checked out and you went into your brain and you said, okay, this is how I'm going to fix the problem, or this is how I'm going to respond. And for me, there was a lot of value in that piece of advice because I do it too. So because I do it, I know exactly what you're doing. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like it's just one of those treat people the way you want to be treated kind of things. And for me, I feel like parents, because they're problem fixers, because they're problem solvers, and they want to fix all their kids' problems, just so they can be happy. They're trying to help, but that's not how it comes off. So it kind of goes back to parents who probably come to you and say, Alex, I do everything for my kid. Like, I can't believe that they don't want to talk to me because they're a teenager and all this. And it's not because of the things you think it is. It's because you're not listening or you're not responding in the way that is effective.
Now, if I try to explain that to a parent that comes to me for advice or coaching, that's not what they want to hear. They want to hear that there's something dysfunctionally wrong with the kid, and they're looking for insight for me to give that to them such that they can go in and course correct that and fix it and change them. They don't want to really look at themselves and go, oh, wow, no one's really pointed it out to me like that before. Wow, no one's really called me out on looking at myself to see, is there another level of listening? Is there another or higher level of me being present and patient and in the moment? As you were talking about when someone's talking to you and they're present and they're really listening and allowing yourself to be heard, I started to think about when I'm in a coaching session, when someone's really engaged and communicating to me, or they ask me a question. A lot of times I'll pause, and because I'm still listening, it's like our brains take a little while to catch up the last 3 or 4 seconds of the words. I'll pause and I'll look over to my left or my right. I zone out, and then I start going and looking for solutions or other possibilities or something. So it allows me to give me the space and the time and the freedom to just be present and listening to every word, like hanging on every single word. And then when they're done, then I give myself permission to kind of check out, go into a zone, and then start reflecting and trying to see if I can find some wisdom or some insight that I can share with them. And that's, I think, a way that you can tell whether you're really present with your kids is as they're sharing with you, are you in your head already trying to figure out a solution for them? Or are you in your head going through this game of, see, I told you so, or are you up in your head validating that one more time they're not trustworthy and responsible. So you got to really be mindful of the head games that's going on when your kids are coming to you and they're revealing themselves. They do that 5, 6, 8, 12 times with you not being present, and what they do is they create a belief that you don't really care. And it's not true that parents don't care. We're just not present. We're just not conscious. We're just not aware of the way that we're showing up is a turnoff to our kids. And then they're checking out and they're going to the room and they're just they're stuffing all the stuff that they really, really deeply want to share with you.
Yeah, and I think for me that the parents not listening is the biggest reason why I can see myself, in the past not speaking up and not talking. But another thing is I feel like, especially, parents are always complaining that us as kids are the ones checked out and, on technology and everything. But, parents are too. And if I'm telling a story about something that probably seems insignificant and you don't really, care about, or you don't care if that's not specifically what you mean when you say why your kids stop talking to you, because you don't want to know that their best friend is upset at their mom. There's a whole but sometimes I can recall times where I would go and be like, oh, yeah, this is going on with Sarah and this and Jamie and so I'm like going on telling a story, and then 2 weeks later I go again and I'm like, oh, remember I told you that story? And then my mom or my dad or whoever has no idea what I was talking about, and I'm like, you weren't even listening. I was sitting there for 20 minutes telling you this story, and it was just to have a conversation, just to it was just normal, natural, just to speak. And then to feel like you weren't heard, or they weren't in that conversation like you thought they were, is kind of a big deal, especially when it's your parents. I don't know why. And if you
Well, I'm sure it's
explain that.
disappointing too. It's got to be disappointing to think that out of everyone in the entire world, who would really think that my life and what I have to share is really important? Who would you narrow it down to?
My parents.
Yeah, there's only two people in the entire world as a child or a young person to think that would anyone, if any one or two people in the world would really care, it'd be your mom and dad. And so I think that sometimes unconsciously as parents, we don't really realize that, or we forget it, or sometimes we need to be reminded how, our kids really look up to us and put us in that role of being validated and being listened to and being heard and being recognized, that what they're sharing is important, whether it makes sense or not, whether you agree with it or not. They just want to be validated that what I'm saying, that you're listening to me, that you deem it as important enough to stop everything you're doing and make it something that's valuable for you in that moment, and that you really honor and respect.
So let's go on to your list and go over some of those, because we could go on forever about this one.
So you just hit the nail on the head on the first one, and a lot of it was, feeling heard. And then I wanted to break down the distinction between listening versus being heard. They're two different distinctions. And the other thing is that I wrote down that one of the reasons why kids stop talking to their parents is because they don't feel like their opinion matters. When your son or daughter comes to you and has an opinion or shares their opinion, you really got to make it a big deal. Like I said, whether you agree with it or not, you have to make it a big deal, because they got creative enough to create an opinion, and then they got courageous enough to share their opinion with you, with all the fears of being rejected or shut down or not agreed upon. They still had to go through that whole mental, emotional process to muster up an opinion from that creative side and then courageous side to share it with you. So you can really chop down that whole process and kill anything that's pure and golden about that process by not having their opinion really matter to you. And so you got to really make a big deal about it, especially when they're young. And if you're unconscious as a parent, you're not really making a big deal about it. The belief that they're creating is that you really don't care about their opinion.
Yeah, I was going to, just to touch on that one, I can kind of see how, even now being a little bit older, I have, well, I can explain like a scenario. Right now, my grandmother lives with us, so your mother-in-law. So my mom's mom lives with us, and I'm constantly going to my mom. I'm so I'm so upset. I'm so frustrated. This happened. This happened. This happened. How it is dealing with, the elderly. So, what do I do about this? What do I do about that? And instead of sitting there and like kind of complaining with me, my mom always has like kind of like an answer, and she always validates, yeah, I feel that way too, kind of thing, and then backs it up with, but this is just how it is, and this is how we're going to move on, or maybe we should do this. So there's always a solution that I know she's already thought of, but having somebody to say, yeah, oh my God, I can't believe you feel that way also, it's like, makes me feel not crazy, or makes me feel like the way
It's
that I,
warranted. That way you feel is validated. It's part of the process, and it's okay to feel like that.
yeah, and there's times where we probably, we don't have the same opinion on it. We'll all say something, and she goes, "It's really not a big deal," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, was it not a big deal last week when you were upset about this?" So it's
But that's what's
easy.
cool about it though is as you're venting your frustration to her, you get to be a mirror for her. Now she's seeing herself when she's saying the exact same thing a couple days ago. So you don't realize that sometimes when we're giving advice, we're really giving advice to ourselves. A lot of times, let's say you come to me and you're venting or you're frustrated or whatever, and then I'm giving you that advice. I'm really giving advice to myself because, a week ago I might have been in the same position. So sometimes people come to us and they mirror our own dysfunction, our own shortcomings. That as we're giving them advice, we're really giving the advice to ourselves. So you got to be that gift for her that as she's telling you, hey, you know what, Jazz, we really should be more compassionate for her and blah, blah. So as she's saying that, she's really saying it to herself, and you got to choose to see it like that rather than choose to see it like she's trying to tell you what to do.
Yeah, and I think the part for me, I don't really mind the advice. The advice is like I could get over, or I can reflect on later. It's not being validated that it's important to me that is the thing that makes me mad or makes me go into a reaction where I get upset, and then I'm sitting there with her arguing, or next time I'm upset about something, I don't have a place to go and vent and let it out, because like you were saying, my mom and my dad are the ones that, especially in this situation, but my mom and my dad are the ones that I'm going to, I feel like they're going to be the ones to acknowledge the way I feel. If I go to my sister or my friend or my boyfriend or whatever, no, those people aren't going to acknowledge it the way that your parents would, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely, yeah. And it brought up, a point that in my book, The Inspirational Parent, I give a very powerful tool that I learned called the feel, felt, found method. And the way that it goes, and I'll just do it briefly, is you say to the person, I know how you feel. I have also felt like that myself. What I found out in that scenario was that I needed to, and then you can give your advice. But by saying it like that, when you tell someone, I know how you feel, it immediately gets them to realize, like, oh, so you know how it feels. Now you have my attention because now I'm being heard and recognize that what I'm feeling is validated. And then when you shift from, I know how you feel, I've also felt that way before. Now immediately we're in the same group. We're in the same club. We can now, sit and swim in the pity party for a little while. I have some team members. And then now when you shift to what I found out was, and now you're sharing the advice that you learned from that experience. Now my ears, like the little dog ears, are like, I'm listening now. And you can now plant those seeds. But if you skip right to what I found out was, and you go right into the advice, you miss the two very powerful components, which is letting them know how they feel and validating that, and also let them know that you felt it one time yourself.
Yeah, and that's almost exactly the scenario I was painting with my mom.
Three components.
If she skips over the, like, oh, I know I'm mad about that too, or I was, and this is what happened kind of thing, then I can kind of see, like, okay, you're right, it's really not a big deal. Like, it happens to everybody, or but
it's almost like you got something and you're like, mom, I got this, and as soon as she goes, honey, I know how you feel, I feel like that too, and then you go, and now it's like, now I'm open to whatever you have to say for the next 3 to 5 minutes. I'm all yours. But if they come to you with something and you don't go to the I know how you feel or I felt like that as well, and you go right to the advice, they just go, they're just, all they're hearing is wah, 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 wah,
yeah,
wah, because you didn't give them the one or two components on the front end.
yeah. And I feel like I've heard feel, felt, found, this whole idea for years, and now I can kind of see for myself, where, because anybody could do that, anybody could say that, but until you start, or I guess until you can look back on an example where, let's say you're in the kitchen doing the dishes and your daughter comes up to you, same scenario, mom, I'm so frustrated about this. Oh, I know, but it's really not a big deal, honey, just get over it. You can kind of see how you just tune them out. Basically, you tune their issue out and you jump
But
to.
what's amazing about that statement is just cut it in half. When they say, Mom, I'm so frustrated, instead of saying, I know, but just blah, 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 you can just say, I know. That's it. I know, honey. I know. Just I know is basically another version of I know how you feel. It's just stop from being an automatic pilot and running
But
through
pa-
all, instead of running through all three of the components really fast, just stop at one component. Honey, I know how you feel, or I know.
But parents don't do that. They're not like this is.
What?
Oh, this is what's frustrating. Now I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated because they're not. They're just like flying right past that whole thing. And now I can see how important it is. Like when my mom does it, and how the effect it has like on our conversation, and eventually like on our whole relationship for the rest of the day or the next couple of weeks or whatever. All because of one conversation where I don't want to put all the blame on the parents, but where she misses the part or that opportunity to create like a bond with me,
Yeah.
or as your kid, and kind of just and skipping through all that just to get to the lesson part. And that part is like you said, we're not listening to that part. But that's what's now I'm all tongue tied because I'm frustrated with parents.
And it's not a blame, it's a responsible thing. Hopefully parents can hear it as, what, Jazz, you're not blaming us. I get to take responsibility for it. And that's what the power play is. I get to take responsibility from realizing that my kids need that front component, and I haven't learned it, or I haven't really recognized or realized how important that front end is. And I'm going to start practicing that. The more I practice it, the better I get at it.
Yeah, we have to take a quick break, right, Andrew? Stay tuned for more of The Inspirational Parent right here on your hometown station, KHTS.
Santa Clarita Philharmonic has begun its season of free concerts. The SCP is a non-profit community-based volunteer symphony orchestra comprised of local musicians from throughout the Santa Clarita Valley who are dedicated to providing quality classical music for the residents of the Santa Clarita Valley. Like the Santa Clarita Philharmonic on Facebook or visit santaclaritaphilharmonic.org for more information.
There are fun kids events at the Church on the Way Santa Clarita. 2 to 5-year-olds meet at the Arc Room on Fridays for toddler exercise time. New moms come to the Church on the Way Santa Clarita on Tuesdays for a new, free Moms Fellowship. Support, friendship, and social events for moms and their babies. Visit tcotwsc.org for these and other exciting events at the Church on the Way Santa Clarita on Cinema Drive, or call 291-6000.
You've worked hard to get here, and now it's time to focus on you. Discover Verano at Aliento, a 55-plus active adult community. These single-story homes were designed for easy living with all the quality, style, and amenities you deserve. Tour 3 brand new model homes at grand opening this Saturday, August 26th from noon to 4. Enjoy music and wine tasting from the 14 exit Golden Valley Road. Aliento is located off Golden Valley Road in Oakcrest. See you there.
The most charming new restaurant is now in Santa Clarita. Marston's Restaurant has been a Pasadena landmark, voted the best breakfast in California by the Food Network magazine. Now, discover Marston's new Santa Clarita location, open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Marston's also has a fantastic catering menu that adds a delicious twist to any event. And they cater picnic dinners for that memorable romantic date. Experience Marston's on Newhall Ranch Road in McBean, or log on to marstonsrestaurant.com.
Your hometown station, KHTS.
You're listening to The Inspirational Parent right here on your hometown station, KHTS. Today we're talking about why kids stop talking to their parents. So before we went on the break, I was getting frustrated and, and tongue-tied with parents. But one of the things I wanted to...
I know how you feel.
What did you find? How'd you feel? What did you find?
I know how you feel when you get frustrated. I've too have felt that before. When I get frustrated, I lose focus on what's important, why I'm here. It kind of frustrates me. And what I found out is if I learn how to just accept things for the way they are and not try to have them be my way, it kind of frees me up and it surrenders me to be present in the moment and to move on to what's next.
Yay. Can you hear me? I'm clapping. Round of applause for the Feel Felt Found experience. If you haven't heard it or you're just joining us, go back to our podcast and find it online at hometownstation.com. It's a really
And you can
great.
get a very descriptive.
Oh, and the Inspirational Parent, my
That's
dad's
right.
new book. Moving on to the next one.
So what I found was, as I started reflecting and writing down some of the things that some of the kids have shared with me in trainings and working with teens and parents, when it comes to why kids stop talking to their parents, is another thing is that they don't trust you anymore. And I think that's very challenging for a parent to accept, is the possibility that their kids don't trust them and that they have, by being a player on the field and a co-participant in the relationship, has lost the trust of their kids. So if you can wrap your mind around that and have some compassion around that, then it frees you up to try to figure out, all right, how do I gain that trust back? Rather than being upset and mad and angry and pointing the finger at them and being the victim to it, learning to go, all right, now that I've, realized that, and now that I see that that's, not the kind of relationship I want, how do I go and clean that up? So that's just one of the bullet points I wrote down, is that one of the reasons is because they don't trust you anymore. Another reason is that they're hurting. They're holding grudges and or resentment for something that you either didn't do, or a certain way that you showed up that they expected you to be. A lot of times I think when you get frustrated with me in those moments, I have to think to myself, okay, who did she need me to be in that moment? Like, did you have a certain way that you visualized me showing up in that moment that didn't match, and then it frustrated you, or because I didn't show up the way you wanted it to look, then you got tagged and got upset and then walked out, or just rolled your eyes and said, I don't know why I bother, and then walk out of the room. So it's really about looking at, what do they need from me? How do I have to show up in a certain way that really symbolizes to them that I am listening, that what they say to me is important? And what's the coolest thing about that is your kids have all those answers. So we can talk about all the magical ingredients and all that, but if you sit your son or daughter down and you're vulnerable enough with them and ask them the question, what does it look like to you when you're talking to me, that I show up to you, that I'm actually listening, and that I'm validating, for you, that you're recognized for what you're saying is valid and important to me? And your kid will tell you. So if I asked you that, what does it look like on your end? How do I need to show up here so that you feel heard, validated, and what you're saying is important?
Well, don't do anything else. So don't be on your phone, or if you have to, step away from the computer or whatever. I kind of like the little head nods. You're doing it right now, huh? The head nods, though, and sometimes, even though I don't like being interrupted, that's like one of my biggest pet peeves. Sometimes I can see there's times where you have to stop and say, okay, let me interrupt you a second. And then you'll ask me questions to get more information on that one specific piece. I'll tell you the answer and you go, okay, go ahead. Keep going. So for me, I'm like, okay, he's paying attention, and I left that part out.
Yeah, so a lot of times I'll say, let me stop you for a minute. What I'm hearing you say is, and then I repeat back, and then that lets you know, okay, he is hearing me, because he's asking me certain questions to get more clarity on what I'm actually saying, to see if what you're saying is actually being interpreted as close as possible to what's coming out of your mouth.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I think for me, that's the most important thing to see from my parent, is just having them feel like, I don't know, like just having them even repeat back to me, but even just like the simple thing of asking a question is like, oh, okay, they want to know more, or they want to get clear on why I made that decision or why I said that. So, and they're really just such small little things to do. Even if you just do the head nod thing, that will last you forever.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I had to learn that. It took for me as a young man to go into a communications class, like a workshop, and participatory workshop, experiential, where I actually had to be put in scenarios where I learned how to listen how to be what's called a committed listener. And I do these workshops myself called communications. We'll get in a room and we'll actually sit, knee to knee, open body position, and we'll just practice eye contact. You'll be amazed how many people don't even know how to have appropriate eye contact and quiet the mind and be present and be connected with human beings. Is mind-boggling that I can do a small little mini workshop and put people in front of each other and eyes are roaming and people are giggling. That just goes to show you how disconnected we really are, and we're taking all of that into our relationships with our kids that we say we love the most.
Well, and then just from that scenario, that goes off into your whole life. Like I can't even tell you how many grown adults I've come into conversation with, or even business transactions with, that they have the dodgy eyes where I'm having a conversation, I'm telling them something important, or they're telling me something important, and they can't even look me in the eyes. And there's nothing more, I guess, trustworthy than somebody that can look at you in the eyes.
Yeah, and what happens is that when we have insecurities as human beings, if your eyes can't stay on me long enough, what happens is this brain, this ego starts to make up stories. Like, what's wrong with me? Our brains have to make up something. It can't just be okay with you being disconnected and not really present with me. So we start making up stories. And most of the time, the stories I'm going to make up are about me, which aren't true. And if you're not present and connected with your kids, then they're making up assumptions and stories about themselves that aren't true. A lot of the times they're limiting beliefs. So the next thing I want to get to is one of the reasons why kids stop talking to their parents is because they don't know how. There's a possibility that no one showed them how. No one modeled it for them. And if they did model it for them, they probably wasn't the great example as a model to be a committed listener. Like I said, I had to actually go to training and classes to teach myself how to head nod. It was in those exercises that as you're talking, the head nod is a way to say, I hear you, or I get it, or I know, or I too have felt like that. And they're just subtle head nods, but it lets the other person unconsciously know, okay, you're listening to me. Otherwise, you wouldn't be head nodding at those pivotal moments when I'm landing something very important. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I can kind of see how just in a regular conversation, just the simple act of being distracted and doing something else, it's an actual physical, like, oh, this person is doing something else that's more important than stopping. And I can kind of see how parents are coming from the other side of, oh, well, my kid decided to have this big long conversation with me in the middle of
making dinner.
Yeah, or in the middle of something important that I'm doing real quick for work, or and it's like you can't pick and choose when your kids are going to come and be vulnerable with you.
That's right. You have to decide.
You have to take advantage of those moments.
What you have to do is you have to decide that this vulnerable moment is more important than the casserole that I got right now for the whole family. I'd rather sacrifice a meal that I prepped for 2 or 3 hours and I'm right in the middle of. If my kids came to me being vulnerable and opening up and wanting to share and connect, I'll just turn the flame off and we'll sit and we'll chat. And when the rest of the family comes out, hey, I guess we're going to go out and we're going to have pizza or whatever. Like, we got to figure it out. But you have to decide what's more important. Is it the meal? Is it picking up the house? Is it washing the dishes? When those moments happen, you got to be ready to jump on them and seize that moment, because if you don't, what you do is you validate for your son or daughter that you don't care. And so once they put you in that box, they slowly start to check out and kind of hang out in the room, and they don't open up to you anymore.
Yeah, and I think what parents are kind of forgetting is that there's a big prep time that your kids are doing before they even come. They're in their room for days sometimes, like walking back and forth with a knot in their stomach. I really have to talk to mom about this, or I really have to talk to dad, and like all of that anxiety that they've built up is still going to just linger if you're not going to let it all out.
That is great insight, because I think as a parent, we have no clue that that's what you guys are doing, that you're in your mind wanting to open up a conversation with us, and it's a whole process that you're in knots over, and you can't sleep at night, and it might be 2 or 3 days that you're trying to mentally prep yourself to even open up a conversation like that. So for us as parents to hear that, it's like, oh, it's heartbreaking. So now I'm even more invested to stop and recognize those moments, be more present, and really give us your attention. So the last thing I put is my kids, one of the reasons why my kids might be not talking to me anymore is because they could be shut down. They could be disconnected. They could be numb and scared. And what I found out is in the training rooms, working with thousands of teens all over the world, is that most kids, 80 to 90% of kids, are numb, disconnected, and shut down. They're robotic. That doesn't mean that they're not bubbly and smiley and playful. And I've seen some of the best kids that seem like they got this great personality and that they're alive. When it comes down to it, in those vulnerable moments, they reveal themselves and they open up and let you know how numb and disconnected and shut down they really are. So a lot of what your kids are doing is they're putting on an act. It's their ego. They hide out in their personality and they turn it on. They're bubbly, and you would never know that when they get home and they want to shut down, they go to the room and they cry, and they just hide out, or they're depressed and numb and emotionless. That's the biggest illusion that parents don't understand, is their kids put on a front and they're really struggling inside. And if you got to ever get a taste of that or get lucky enough to have them be honest with you, it's heartbreaking. So now I'm going to go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, if you can kind of compare that little description or scenario, or even anytime you've had any type of anxiety or that, not in your stomach kind of thing, if you can imagine that time when your kids come to you for things, it's kind of like it makes you wonder, like, why would I even make this other thing a priority? I know what that feels like. I know what it's like to be all in knots and not be able to sleep and be upset about something and want to get it off your chest and not to turn that opportunity away. I know people are doing it unconsciously, but I'm just saying, if you can think of that next time you're in that similar scenario, I guarantee you're not going to turn them away.
Can I straighten your hair?
Why is it all wonky?
No, but and that's a great example of not being present when someone's talking, right? It's
Yeah.
like, so someone, if you're talking and you're revealing and they're trying to grab something off your face or grab something, it's like, really? That's more important than what I'm saying? So I just wanted to call myself out. All right, so now we're going to transition into some of the tips. Like, all right, Alex, now that you just kind of stirred it up in me now and had me look at some of those things that are disturbing, how do I move forward? How do I cause a shift in myself? So here's what I'm going to suggest. One, get 100% present when your kids talk to you. It's just an internal commitment you make. Flip a switch to just decide, from this moment forward, every time my son or daughter comes to me, I'm going to practice getting 100% present and in the moment. Show them with facial expressions, so you hit it right on the head. Show them with your expressions, body posture, and certain symbols to let them know that I hear you. It can even be hand gestures. I remember this one parent, when her kids used to talk to her, she used to put her hands in front of her like gratitude. Kind of, she's like, oh, like she would put it in front of her with a smile on her face. And I just thought that was the cutest thing, because there were she wasn't just using the facial expression, she was using her hand gestures to let them know that she's grateful for what they're sharing with her. So get 100% present with your kids. And then validate verbally that what they're sharing is a great point. So as you're talking, as soon as they're done, you go, wow, that's a great point, right? Even just verbally letting them know that what they said is that there's some great insight in there. And then that it's very interesting, a very interesting way to look at it. In some of the trainings, I'll teach that exercise, that's interesting, right? Sometimes we got to find little clicky words to practice so that when kids share, you go, that's interesting. I never saw it like that before.
But the really great thing about that's interesting, even though I get so annoyed because I feel like sometimes people are using it sarcastically.
They can. It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah. So, but what I think is the greatest thing about it is going back to what I was saying earlier, but before the break, was taking that pause after somebody finishes having a conversation with you and really, taking in everything that they said, and then coming up with the solution or possibilities or whatever it is that you need to say, because jumping right into something, it leaves that space of
doubt.
Yeah, of being and
because you piggybacked on what I said so fast. Now I'm doubting whether you actually heard
listened,
what I said and it landed.
And the biggest thing, though, is that that's interesting is the concept of being neutral for a second before reacting. So you could use that space to decide, okay, am I going to react positively or negatively in this situation?
It's like a timeout, a neutral timeout. You don't even have to say interesting. You just go, I never saw it like that before. Or, wow, I never considered that as a possibility. Or And a lot of times I'll say stuff like, I can see how you see it like that. However, because some parents will go, so Alex, I'm supposed to validate everything they say. What if it's wrong? Then I'll tell them, you just create a response that's neutral without making them wrong. Like, I never saw it like that, or I can see how you see it like that. However, have you ever considered this possibility? Then all it becomes is you and your son or daughter just sharing possibilities and perspectives. It's not about a full-on argument about who's being right and who's being wrong. So let's finish this up because we've got a few more minutes. The last thing I'm going to say is do some cleanup. Realize that there might be some apologies, some I'm sorries that are missing that have warrant some healing in your son or daughter for whatever reason, even if it wasn't your fault. Even if it was done unconsciously, causing pain, they might be hurting and they might be yearning for an apology or a cleanup. And it's your job to take responsibility for that.
So one more time for the people in the back, do a cleanup. It's the most annoying thing to me is when my mom or my dad or whoever, like, and I do it all the time. I'm 100% guilty, so I'm not going to push this on anybody. But when I just brush it off and move on with it, and then it's still lingering, and then 2 or 3 weeks later it's brought up again, and I'm like, I thought you were over that, or I thought I was over that, but I really wasn't. So just do the cleanup. It's like the most awkward thing in the world, but but it's like it's gonna help you in the end, and it's so frustrating to me when I get stuck in one.
And the next thing is invite them into a new relationship with you. Make a promise that you'll be more understanding, you'll be more aware, more conscious, more loving, more compassionate with them. Invite them into a new, improved relationship with a new commitment on your side, and those kids will be doing backflips. They might not be doing it outside, externally, but internally they're going to be doing backflips and excited, because I think that's what most kids want is, hey, mom, dad, I know you have flaws, but can you just at least be honest and own them? Because if you own them, I can accept that. I can accept growing and learning and us growing together. What I can't accept is that you live in the illusion like you're perfect, or that you don't have any improvement to do. I think that's the most biggest turnoff that kids have is they can see your dysfunction. You're the one that's pretending that you don't have them. And then the other thing is be willing to change, be willing to take responsibility for the part that you played in it, and then also be willing to model that which you want to see in your kids, because they're learning from somebody. So all those bad habits that you don't like in your son or daughter is because they're learning that from you. They have to be. Either you or your husband, or you and your wife, or there's someone's modeling to them. They didn't just learn that just out of thin air.
We have to take a quick break, but don't leave us yet, because we have a very special giveaway when we come back from the break. Stay tuned for more of The Inspirational Parent right here in your hometown station, KHTS.
Santa Clarita, bedbugs are taking over our city. They've invaded our homes, our businesses, and most importantly, our sleep. If you have suspicious bites that appear nightly, or have a bug that you need ID'd, your best option is to make one call to All Pro. We offer a 100% guarantee that your bedbug issues will be solved with heat in one treatment. No need to tent or spray your house with chemicals. Heat is all you need. Call 661-298-2200 or text me a bug picture to 661-645-0540. It's time to sleep tight again, SCV.
Something big is coming to Castaic.
Is it a dinosaur, Bob?
No, Blanche.
Is it the 2020 Olympics?
No.
I know. We're finally hosting the World Cup.
No, silly. They're building Castaic High.
Bob, no way.
Go visit CastaicHighProject.com. You'll get all the latest details.
What's that web address again, Bob?
CastaicHighProject.com.
Again?
CastaicHighProject.com.
Bigger than a dinosaur?
That's right. CastaicHighProject.com.
Do you like to rock across Africa?
Then the wait is over.
Africa Rocks! Africa's Greatest Hits is now available at the San Diego Zoo!
Who could forget 99 red baboons? Or the African crested porcupine smash hit, I Got Quills to Pay the Bills! Hey, don't get too close.
And the hits keep on coming.
Africa Rocks has all your favorites from 6 different African habitats.
Hungry like a leopard.
Ibex is back.
Harder, better, Fossa stronger.
And a new track from Kendrick Lamar.
Now, Larry.
Yes, Chuck?
A collection of this magnitude, I'd fly to Africa.
Well, don't pack your bags, friend. Africa Rocks is only available right here at the San Diego Zoo.
Wow, that really does rock.
No, it Africa Rocks.
Welcome to Africa Rocks at the San Diego Zoo, rolling out July 1st.
Stay late now through Labor Day at Nighttime Zoo, presented by your San Diego County Toyota dealers.
Your hometown station, KHTS.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Inspirational Parent right here on your hometown station, KHTS. Today, we talked about why kids stop talking to their parents. So if you missed any of it, you can go ahead and find our podcast online or our Facebook Live post.
I want to also
KHTS.
preface that if you are a new parent and your son or daughter's, 4 or 5 years old, and they look up to you like you are God and you're their king, their queen, that's how they're supposed to start off. However, they're supposed to stay like that. And it's our job as parents to keep nurturing that relationship and keep evolving, keep reinventing ourselves in that parenting role, such that they keep turning to us and wanting to share and wanting, to have us be their mentor and their advisor and their advocate. We want to stay in that role. And that's the whole purpose of the book, The Inspirational Parent, is how do we, if we've lost our way from that role model to them, how do we get back to it? And if you are that now, how do I get some insight so I can stay like that, so I can see what some of the learning curve is going to be coming down the pipeline? And a lot of that is because I've been working with teenagers and working with their frustrations and all of their, I've heard all their cries, and I share a lot of that insight in the book, as well as some of the breakthroughs I had as a parent and some of my own shortcomings and failures and learning experiences. And so a couple weeks ago, I did a book launch on The Inspirational Parent, and I've asked my community to come out and my team to come rally around me and purchase the book such that we can get it up as a bestseller on Amazon to be able to make a bigger difference so it gets ranked up high and more people find it across the world. In order to do that, I also made a commitment that I would raffle off a couple of gifts for people that were willing to support me, not only buy the book, but also put a review on Amazon. And we got, I think we got like 16 people that stepped up and did that, which I'm very grateful for. And I want to thank all of you for your support. So we get to keep our word and raffle off 2 Kindle Fires. And you're going to do
the honors?
Yeah, you're going to do the honors.
Yay,
so shake it up real good. Shake it up real good.
Wait, I had a whole presentation plan and then you ruined it
okay,
for
go.
Facebook. It's for Facebook, so if you're driving, you need to pull over and jump on our Facebook Live. But if you purchase this book, The Inspirational Parent by Alex Urbina, then you left a review on Amazon, you were entered to win a Kindle Fire HD8. Look how this fancy packaging, so nice. It's from China. All right.
I wanted to open it and install an ebook on there, and
sounds
your
nice.
mom didn't want me to do it.
Right? Okay, so the first one is Rafael Ramirez.
Rafael Ramirez.
You know him personally?
I do.
Yay! Okay, second one, last one. Amber Rojas. Wow, how interesting.
Right.
Okay. Interesting because I haven't seen Amber in such a long time.
And
so
you know what she said?
funny.
She sent me a text message, said, if I win, I'm going to donate to somebody. So I think that's pretty powerful.
Oh my God.
And very, very nice of her.
That's why she won.
Yeah, exactly. That's what those types of people that are givers and contributors and, live their life of service.
Either of you, when we contact you, if you do want the book installed on
your
Kindle,
me know.
let us know, and we'll make sure that happens. Cool. First I want to kind of just take a second to acknowledge everybody for being such a big part. For 2 weeks it was like my Facebook was just constantly full of, oh, I got my book, and people sending all their pictures in, and it was really it was really interesting to see people that I've never met before that you interact with in trainings, and people saying, thank you so much, Alex, you've changed my life, I can't wait to read this book, and to see that on people that, like I said, I've never met before, knowing that there's a whole world out there that you're interacting with people and changing their lives and helping them is really inspiring to me. So I wanted to say thank you to all those people who did post those so that I could have that acknowledgement in that moment and be able to acknowledge my dad.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to the next phases of getting it out there worldwide, where it can continue to be acknowledged and recognized as a tool for parents for a lifetime. And so I'm so glad that I was able to really make that commitment, put all those goodies down on in writing, so that people can continue to have those awakenings, and we can cause more conscious parents, more healing, and create more powerful young leaders in the world that believe in themselves, remember their gift because their parents created that safe, loving environment for them to kind of shine and reveal their true selves. And I want to make an announcement. I actually started writing a second book.
Here we go.
And here we go again. However, it's not going to be part of the series, so it's not going to be a big book. I'm writing a children's book, and my commitment is to have it be completed in the next 90 days. And it's going to be short, sweet, powerful. And what it is it's going to be a book of affirmations. It's going to be a book for parents with younger kids that they can read these powerful affirmations to their sons and daughters, reminding them how amazing they truly are. And then the kids get to validate themselves in the affirmations. It's going to be an amazing little contribution, and I'm really excited to get that going. And that's how you celebrate a book launch, is you start creating your next book as well as learning the next phases of promoting the original book. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us today on The Inspirational Parent. We're here every Friday from 12 to 1 p.m. right here on your hometown station, KHTS.